Get a roll call for members, please.
Ann Brinkman, absent. Alan Buckman,
Present.
Steve Timms.
Here.
Scott Ohm,
Here.
Amanda Weaver,
Here.
Tracy Gildner, absent. Silka Pop. Thank you.
The next order on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I move to approve the order of the agenda.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the order of the minutes for February 6, 2014?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes for February 6, 2014.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
This is the time for any person to speak on a subject not appearing on the agenda. Is anyone signed up? Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the public hearing. I open the public hearing for case number WZ 14-01, an application filed by Mario Lombardi for approval of a zone change from restricted commercial RC to mixed-use neighborhood, MUN, for property located at 6405-640N West 44th Avenue.
Good evening. For the record, Meredith Reckert, Wheat Ridge Community Development Department, and I am here to present case number WZ-14-0, which is a request for approval of a zone change from restricted commercial to mixed-use neighborhood at 6405 through 09 West 44th Avenue. Current zoning on the property is restricted commercial RC, and the comprehensive plan designates neighborhood commercial corridor for this area. I'd like to enter into the record the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, case file and packet materials, and the contents of this digital presentation. The property is located within the city of Wheat Ridge, and all proper posting and notification requirements have been met. Therefore, Commission does have jurisdiction to hear this case. So let's take a look at some slides. This particular property is made up of 3 parcels. You can see 44th Avenue down here on the lower portion of the picture. North is to the top of the screen, and the 3 parcels we're talking about are these 3 right here. There's 2 existing structures on the property. The western one, which is 6409, was built in 1967 and has just a little bit over 2,100 square feet of area. The eastern building, which is 6405, was built in 1960 and is 680 square feet in size. Both buildings are used as antique stores, which are permitted in the existing zoning. This is the same 2012 aerial, which has the zoning layer on it. So again, 44th Avenue runs along the south side of the property. North is to the top of the screen. The 3 sites that we're discussing this evening are all included in one taxing parcel, and they are outlined in sort of a teal color. This particular area has quite a variety and mix of zonings. If you look at the picture or the image on the overhead, you can see that there's sort of a hodgepodge of colors, and each of those colors represents a different zoning. So just to run quickly through it, to the west, we've got some neighborhood commercial zoning. To the east, we've got some C1 zoning. On the south side of 44th Avenue is sort of a mix of neighborhood commercial and restricted commercial. And then further to the north is R3, that's sort of the lighter orange designation directly north of the site. And there's a mix of uses, including low-density residential, medium-density residential. There's small businesses and retail and office in this area. The one thing I would point out to you is that the city's newest park addition is just one lot to the east over here in this larger piece of C1 zoning that I'm pointing to with the cursor. Our Kendall Street Park has been master planned and should start construction this spring, so that's kind of exciting for the area. Just a few pictures of the front of the property. Again, there are two structures on on three different lots that are a single taxing entity. This one right here that we're looking at in the foreground is 6409, with 6405 sort of in the background. This is the existing sign for the properties. This is more of a straight-on shot. Again, 6409 over here on the left-hand side with 6405 on the right. That existing sign in the foreground, you can see the existing parking that comes in off 44th Avenue. And then this is just another shot, this time looking at more of a northwestern orientation. So again, the sign in the front, you can see 44th Avenue here on the very left-hand side, 6409, and then 6405. So the existing zoning on the property is restricted commercial, and the proposed zoning is mixed-use neighborhood. Those zonings are actually pretty consistent as far as what's allowed. They're intended to allow medium-density commercial uses that serve more of the neighborhood than the region, and they allow service, office, and retail. Probably the big distinction between the two of them is that the RC zoning, which is the existing zoning, does not allow any new residential period, whether it's single family or duplexes or multifamily, whereas the mixed-use neighborhood zoning does. So that's the main distinction between the two. The RC doesn't allow any new residential development, but the MUN would. Both of the zone districts would follow the standards for new construction, which are outlined in the Architectural and Site Design Manual, and that includes things such as articulation of the facade, variations in materials, transparency, and so on. So that is the same in both of those zonings. The height is a little bit different in the RC zoning. 50 feet is permitted for all uses, whether they're residential or commercial. Whereas in the mixed-use neighborhood, it's a little bit more sensitive to those uses. For residential uses or mixed residential and commercial, the building restriction is 35 feet and 50 feet for just straight commercial. Other than that, setbacks are pretty much the same. There's a little bit different in the amount of landscaping. For the restricted commercial, it's supposed to be 20%. For landscaping in the MUN, it's 10% for mixed use and 15% for a single use. Built into the mixed use neighborhood, we have some of the same provisions in RC, is that they do both take into context adjacent residential uses, so things like parking lot buffering would be required, landscape buffers and screening and that kind of thing, so that's pretty consistent. At this point, the property owner does not intend on expanding the building or redeveloping the site, and the request is merely speculative in nature to allow more options for the property owner. So this is a zone change. And as part of the city's process, we We do require a pre-application neighborhood meeting. This meeting was held on December 18th, and we had 3 folks in attendance from the neighborhood. Included in your packet is a recap of some of the discussion items. Essentially, it's centered around the zone change process, permitted uses and proposed uses, and what exactly the owner was trying to accomplish behind doing the zone change. Another thing that is very typical is that we, as soon as we get an application in, we do refer it out to all the pertinent service agencies, which include the fire district, water district, sanitation district, public works, and so on. All of the respondent agencies are currently serving the property. Nobody had any concerns. If the property were to redevelop, we would, of course, do a referral all over again as part of our approval process. And again, the property owner is not proposing any changes to the property at this time. Any new construction would require administrative site plan review. So we are recommending approval of the request. We always do an analysis of the evaluation criteria, which has been detailed in your packet, but I'd just like to go through some of the major points. First of all, we think that the proposed zoning is consistent with the policies and goals in the city's comprehensive plan. Envision Wheat Ridge in the structure plan of that document, 44th Avenue, is shown as being neighborhood commercial corridor and then transitioning into neighborhood to the north. We feel that because the mixed-use zoning would allow for a wider range of uses on the property, that the zone change is expected to encourage investment in the area, as well as the allowance for continued revenues if there are retail sales tax generating uses, so that would be consistent. There are a variety of uses and zonings along the 44th Avenue corridor in this area, and we believe that the change of zone will not result in any adverse impacts. Any new development would require site plan review through the Community Development Department, which we would then do an analysis of traffic impacts, drainage, and so on. We also feel that there have been some substantial improvements in the area for a couple of reasons. The first is as a result of the construction of the Walmart Center, which is about 4 blocks to the east, that was built in the town of Lakeside. And because of the commercial draw of that, we expect there to be more commercial development in that proximity. We also feel that the new Kendall Street Park could encourage some interesting uses that might work well for the property owner. We finally have concluded that the city does continue to invest in the infrastructure with construction of the park. And again, we think that there might be some unique opportunities to play off that. Construction is supposed to start this spring. And in general, we have concluded that the evaluation criteria does support approval of the request. So that concludes my staff comments. I would be happy to answer questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Reckon. Mr. Bucknam?
Thanks. Meredith, just one quick question. I know we've addressed this a little bit in other zoning cases where we're looking at I'm looking at Exhibit 3, the zoning map.
Okay.
How the zoning doesn't seem to match up exactly with these lot lines. Is that just an artifact of?
Yeah, we have talked about this before. The parcel, there's a difference between the parcel layers and our zoning layers, sure. And it's based on what the county is showing on theirs. Theoretically, zoning lines should run with property lines, but if there appears to be a little bit of an offset, that's probably why.
So obviously we'd be, when we're talking about rezoning, we're rezoning the entire taxing parcel, not
yes,
just,
and not the neighbor's property.
And not excluding a little sliver of,
Right.
of the, okay. All right, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Commissioner Weaver? Mr. Timms?
I do have a couple of questions, please. Thank you for that presentation.
Sure.
The first question I have is regarding that zoning map. On the west of this property, we have NC
Yes.
zone property. Can you explain for us what the difference is of NC to RC
Yes.
and C1 is?
Well, the way that our zoning categories are set up as they get more intensive, the uses also get more intensive. So for example, neighborhood commercial is our least intensive commercial zoning. It allows essentially only office and small service. When we move up to the RC, it's a little bit more intense. It allows some office, or allows all office service and then limited retail, okay? The next higher category is C1, and that is more of a regional draw. It allows all the stuff that was allowed in the prior two zone districts, but then some more of the intensive uses. That's where we see liquor stores, large shopping centers, some auto repair types of facilities.
Thank you, that is helpful. And then the Planning Commission, we recommended, I think, a similar type of situation, I think, on Otis and 44th, that Camaro
Yes,
dealership. Didn't that get rezoned to
it did.
mixed
and
use?
Yes, it got rezoned to mixed use, and he actually, because he had the interior, he was a fancy auto rehabilitator. I'm not probably saying that correctly, but he did have to go through a conditional use process to get that specific use.
Okay,
And it was pretty heavily conditioned, no outside storage and things like that.
okay.
Yes.
And then I have a general question, and this is going to be the crux of my question. Reading the staff report and then reading the applicant's narrative and reading the minutes from the public hearing, it seems like there's a little discrepancy on what this corridor wants to become, meaning I read the staff report and it sounds like based on the structure plan and here there's opportunities for this corridor to go commercial. And then I read in the applicant's letter, and I can address this to the applicant, but the applicant says, with the commercial aspect of 44th Avenue slowly evaporating, it's important for businesses, owners, and the cities in general to adapt. And then in the neighborhood meeting comments, it says that the applicant is interested in exploring the option of converting the property to residential. So it sounds like there's a little bit of discrepancy there, right? We talk about some of the benefits that this property can provide economically, but then it sounds like the applicant is looking maybe at a residential, which would not necessarily help the city financially on a sales tax level.
It wouldn't help the city financially, but it would give us new housing stock,
Right.
Which we need. A lot of our housing stock is from the 40s and 50s, deteriorating. The other thing is that a lot of our existing residential doesn't provide the amenities that people want. They want electrical outlets and coat closets and that kind of thing, which you don't get with, some of you can relate to that. So it is kind of a hodgepodge, and even if you look at the zoning map, it's mixed in there. So it's, I guess, kind of hard to say what is the trend. The applicant should be able to talk a little bit about his success with tenants in this space, and I think that's part of what's, he's looking for options that would be opened up to him with the new zoning.
The staff have any record, these properties are, for Wheat Ridge, relatively new, I guess. Is there any record, were they built as commercial properties or were they built as residential and converted over time to commercial? Do
I
you
know at least one of, I think let's see, if we go back to I believe that the one on the east was probably a residential property. It looks like it. And I think that one of them might have even had a unit in the back. I don't know if that's still there or not. So it's, again, one of those hodgepodge kind of zoning and use situations that when we adopted Jefferson County zoning, after we incorporated, we inherited it. So we make do the best we can.
I understand that. And then you talk about, in the staff report, prior to any future development, a site plan review application will be required if this is approved, right? So if one of these two buildings was converted to either a single-family residential or a duplex, would a site plan review still occur? What would the process be if that were to happen?
Even if the building envelopes didn't change,
Okay.
and we were just looking at interior remodeling, we would probably require a site plan just because the commercial the zoning, the landscape standards are a little bit different. We'd want to see the parking. Both properties are non-conforming according to parking and landscaping, so we would definitely want to see something with the change of use just to see how the property would function. The the arrangement you're seeing here where cars just back out right onto 44th Avenue, we would not permit that now. So with any sort of change of use or redevelopment, we would require a site plan.
That's very helpful. Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Commissioner Pop?
My only question is with regard to the proposed zoning. So you talked about sort of the different tiers of commercial zoning, neighborhood commercial, restricted commercial, and is it C1?
Yes, C1.
So if you were to put this, the commercial component of this on that spectrum, would it lie in the restricted commercial?
It would be very close to the restricted commercial.
Okay, and when it says something about limited range of neighborhood serving commercial and retail uses, does that differ in any way from restricted commercial?
No, that's right on par.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
You got one more?
Yeah, one more question. The parcel just to the east, 6375 West 44th there, and I know it's zoned C1 and it's immediately adjacent to the new park. What is the current use of that? Is it used as a
I
residence?
believe
or
it's
as
a
commercial?
residence. The property owners are in the audience, so they might be able to answer that when.
The thrust of my question was whether it was, being used sort of as a non-conforming use right now, or if it was
I don't
actually
have a good
commercial.
picture of it, but I believe it is used as a residence, but the zoning is commercial. So again,
I'm just trying to contextualize how the mixed-use neighborhood zoning would kind of fit into that strip if we have that non-conforming use and there's residential. Okay, thanks.
I have one question. What is the zoning for the new park?
the zoning for the new park is C1. So go figure, again, another, so it's this piece right here that we're looking at, and it is zone C1 in the front, about the front 2/3, and then R3 in the back.
Okay.
And they are currently working with the city. They're in the process of getting a building permit. So we're looking at drainage and all that good stuff. And hopefully start construction this spring.
So the zoning wouldn't change?
No, we allow parks in all of our
Okay,
zonings.
thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Rucker. Let's hear from the applicant. Yeah, if you could come to the podium and state your name and address.
My name is Mario Lombardi. Questions did you have?
If you could also state your address, please.
My physical address?
Yeah.
My home address, 4571 Grove Street, Denver, Colorado, 80211.
Did you want to make a presentation or
Not at this time. I wish I could give you guys some concrete plans on what I want to do with the zone change in the future, but just what I've seen with, the development of 38th with this new zoning and my history with properties in Wheat Ridge, I think it'll definitely be a good addition.
Thank you. Commissioner Bucknam? Commissioner Weaver? Commissioner Timms?
Mr. Lombardi, thank you for coming out tonight. What's your history of these parcels in terms of how long have you owned them, and what is your history with the tenants that you've had there?
I've owned this property since, October of '08. Originally, I bought the property, I used the east property for my Cricket cell phone store. That lasted a few years, and then at this point, we're doing the antique shops. I think Russell's been on the west side for about, 3 years, and the east side's been about a year and a half.
And do you believe, based on your applicant letter, do you believe that there's a greater chance for these to go residential in the future? Or just explain where you're kind of thinking about some of that.
I don't know. What I like about mixed use is, the option for both. What I've seen, like I said, what I've seen on 38th gives more options to provide, commercial along with residential. I honestly don't know what I'm going to do with it yet.
Do you have any plans, if this is approved, to sell the properties immediately?
Not at this point, no. I'd rather keep it. Like I said, I have several properties in Wheat Ridge, residential properties at this time. So I'm very familiar with the area. I've lived in this area my whole life, and I'd like to continue redeveloping it.
Okay. And you understand staff's issue that if these get converted to single family or a single family attached or detached, that would go through a site plan review?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Bob?
No, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. I'd like to open up the citizens forum. Are there any citizens that have signed up to speak? Meredith?
No one has signed up, but
Okay.
obviously.
If anybody wants to speak, you can come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Anyone? No? I will close the citizens forum. I would like to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. I will move to recommend approval of case number WZ-14-01, a request for approval of a zone change from restricted commercial to mixed-use neighborhood for a property located at 6405 through 6409 West 44th Avenue for the following reasons. Number one, the proposed zone change is consistent with Envision Wheat Ridge. Number two, there are changing conditions in the immediate area, including development in the town of Lakeside and construction of the Kendall Street Park. Number three, increasing the potential land use options will be a benefit for the city and may serve as a catalyst for other similar requests in the area. And for the evaluation criteria, support the zone change request.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you.
For the folks in the audience, this case will go on to city council, who will make the final decision with the planning commission recommending approval.
Okay, are there any other items?
Nothing from staff at this point. We are still looking at trying to schedule a study session. I know we've talked about that a couple times. We will, let's see, Commissioner Gildner's term is up in March, and so we're hoping we can get a replacement, so we have a full commission. We usually like to do that first, so just so you know. She's 4, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So I was, is there anybody else who's up that?
I was up, but I resubmitted my application. So I will see if council chooses to reappoint me or not.
I think, no, he's from 3, I think. I'm not sure.
Otherwise, that's it.
If there's anything else? I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Call for vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Who was the second? Was it Steve?
Thank you.